Hi, everybody. So, a quick recap. So, this tiny American German colony, just the two streets, that's it, crisscross, because, well, those were the American evangelists that came to the Holy Land with a special mission to prepare the land for the arrival of Messiah, that is Jesus. And these people were just several families from the Jonesport town of Jonesport in Maine in the States. And it took them a bit more than 40 days to reach the shores of Jaffa, which is Tel Aviv. And they came with a prefabricated wood for their homes, for their houses. Sorry, and well, this is what Tel Aviv looks now. This photo is quite recent, but well, there's still a lot of construction going on anyway. If it's not here, it's somewhere next to just around the corner. So Tel Aviv now is the big city with high-rise buildings, but also old areas. Well, when these Americans arrived, they only saw just the Jaffa, like in the previous photograph, and the sand dunes. There was nothing, just wilderness. And that's what they came to. And they were not allowed even to disembark. Once they were finally allowed to do that, they were not allowed to move anywhere further from the shoreline because the Ottomans still hadn't got the money for the land deal. So those were 157 Americans that arrived in 1866, bringing wooden houses with them, bringing their children with them, and they were forced to stay on the shore until everything was sorted with the Ottomans. Until then. And this is when the hardship started because uh, people started dying just in that temporary makeshift camp on the shore. And the only doctor died. And then, well, finally, when everything, the land deal was sorted, they were allowed to go to the location. And it was getting from bad to worse because they were not ready for the hardships. Yeah, these people came with their homes, they built their homes. They started doing things immediately. They were not sitting idle. They tried very hard every day to grow food for themselves, to prepare the land, to develop the land. But this was uh, just way too complicated. Plus, the only leader, Sir James Adams, the Reverend Sir James Adams, actually was not a very good man and not a very good leader and not a very good Christian even. So these people lost hope, lost strength, and a lot of them lost their family members. This is the photograph of just several families of the American German colony. Well, at that point, it was called American colony. And this is the photo of the only person that stayed and the only person that actually got ahead from that 150 something, 57 people. It's Rollo Floyd. You see that man seated with a big, big beard. So Rollo Floyd, I told you his story on the previous tours because Rollo Floyd became the very first tour guide of the Holy Land, and he was among those people who turned the Holy Land into at least more convenient and explorable parts of the Middle East. So he and in general, those very first settlers, Christian settlers, German colonies that also emerged around the same time in Haifa and just a little bit before that, and also further settlements, Christian settlements would uh, help develop this land. So actually, they did their part. They indeed tried to fulfill the prophecy, and they significantly developed and improved the Holy Land. The Messiah hasn't arrived yet, but the heritage of these people, the legacy of these people, and their impact is seen every day in the Holy Land, for sure. So this is exactly the friendship house I'm talking about. So this is a museum of of the American colony, American German colony. But this house focuses on the American story because it was established by an American couple, Jane Holmes and Dr. Reed Holmes, the late Dr. Reed Holmes. This is what this house actually looked like, but from a different angle. And this house looked like this all at times of the American German colony. When the Americans left, they didn't take the houses with them. They couldn't really pack them back. So the American colony was sold to Germans from Haifa. We will be talking about it for the two upcoming tours. Well, tonight and then the following tour next weekend. And up until basically the First World War, and even up until the Second World War, this land was it belonged to Germans. And when Germans came, obviously they would rebuild the American houses, and the houses were they looked all the houses basically looked like the left side of this like half late half of the left half of this building. So when the in the 80s the Holmes family arrived, they saw it in a horrible condition, absolutely appalling condition. It was just slums. Houses didn't have roofs, floors, windows. There was nothing. It was in a completely dilapidated, almost dilapidated, almost. So these is the Gene Holmes and Reed Holmes. Here they are, and they happen to be from Maine. And Dr. Reed Holmes was writing a book about those American settlers, and then he decided to come to the Holy Land to see that American heritage that was there. So this is when this book would be published. And apart from just simply recording the heritage of of the American settlers, they decided eventually to stay and help bring it back to life. So what we see now is that the joint efforts of the Holmes family and also the Israel Antiquities Authorities and the City Hall of Tel Aviv that tried and succeeded in the recreation of this colony. So most of the houses would look well. They look the way they looked after the let's say revamping by the Germans, but it's not a museum. These dozens of houses, people live in it. It's somebody's property. And there's also even a modern part to the right-hand side from where we are. We will be talking about it as well in the next tour, in the final episode. And so this is just now it's the place where the heritage of both Americans and German settlers is remembered. But just to give a little bit of a recap, so to the right-hand side, now we're going to see this house. This is the house of Rollo Floyd, right? This is the house of that very first tour guide of the Holy Land. This is him. So as I said, he took with him also his carriage from Maine. He brought his wife, his family. His wife passed away. He remarried again, and this happened to be the same time the Holy Land opened its borders, right? Opened its doors to Christian pilgrims, to Jewish pilgrims, and this is when the whole frenzy about the Holy Land started. First as just the religious pilgrimage for a long time, but after that, tourism, the way we know tourism now was actually shaped at that very time, in that very place. So for a reason, you see here the name Thomas Cook and Son, because Thomas Cook has a lot to do with what we're going to be talking today. Yes, so Thomas Cook, the British, actually the Baptist and missioner, turned out to be one of the most successful entrepreneurs of his time, and the real, I would say, pioneer of package tourism. These are just some photos taken in one of the trips that were arranged by Rolf Lloyd, who worked for Thomas Cook. That is. And there are also a lot of photographs taken by American pilgrims, travelers, and you can find them in the Library of Congress. So this is where everything started. Every package tour we buy nowadays actually started with these package tours to the Holy Land. So, but again, as I said, we are now focusing on the German story. There are some buildings that we haven't been to. So the right-hand side, just next to the Friendship House, which is to the right, next to it is the church. We are going to visit it next time. The church is one of the last buildings to have been constructed. So the Friendship House was rebuilt, well, it was restored by the Holmes, and the idea was that half of the building would look like a German building, and half of the house looked just like it actually looked during the times of the Americans. That's again simply it was the idea, because the heritage of both Americans and German settlers is remembered. That was the place. That was the point. And yes, as I told you last time, the Friendship Road that was built between Tel Aviv, or between Jaffa, there was no Tel Aviv at that point, between Jaffa and Jerusalem, it all started with Rolf Lloyd, with his carriage, his horses, and so he arranged everything. The dragoman, that were the interpreters, the guards, transportation, the places to stay. First, those were just tent camps, and then little by little there would be pilgrimage centers built in the important sites, such as in Jerusalem and also in the Galilee. Well, because Christian pilgrims absolutely had to go to the Galilee, right? Because this is where Jesus' ministry was. And Rolf Lloyd knew all of that, and so he started with just tents and camels. So, and also in this area, there is a small garden, and actually, this is the garden that was originally developed by American settlers and redesigned and significantly improved by the German settlers. The question is why Americans did not succeed and why the Germans succeed. The Germans were, the first German colony was established about a decade before 1866, when Americans came, and it was in Haifa. No one actually can tell you for sure why Germans just knew it better. Well, but they had been definitely better prepared. And in Haifa, they managed to maintain far better relationships with the Ottomans than in Tel Aviv. Plus, Haifa is up north, and for some reason, all their agricultural innovations and their knowledge and their tools worked better there. So by the time Americans had come, and by the time Americans realized that they had been failing, Germans had already earned some experience in doing things Middle Eastern way. So this is the first house we saw. So this is actually the first house you see as you enter the American German colony, and the terrace looks like, and the house, the way it looks now, this is how it was redesigned by Germans. But the balconies, the wooden part is, this is exactly the wood from Jonesport, Maine. And the building next to it is their hotel. It's now called the Driscoll Hotel because it's named after the two Americans, the two brothers, the Driscoll brothers, that came here not to grow crops, but they knew this would be this would be a very big place, and they knew that people would be coming, the pilgrims would be coming, and they built the very first hotel because the facilities for pilgrims were simply non-existent. And well, whenever pilgrims arrived at Jaffa, there were very few places to stay, and it was cramped, super expensive, and well, it was just not didn't really meet the standards because only poor people did travel to the Holy Land, but there were also people who wanted to travel with a little bit more comfort and had the budget to pay for it. But there was nothing to offer until the Driscoll brothers came in. But back in the day, so Driscoll brothers did not call the hotel after themselves. I like the two kids standing there next to this house. So you see, the house looks the same way, right? It's still the same house. And the hotel looks pretty much the same way. And the building next to it, which we're going to visit next, also looks the same. Yeah. And Jerusalem Hotel, the name would remain. And but originally it was the name, and it was the American property, so run by the two brothers, the Driscoll brothers. This is the only photo I have been able to find of them. And yeah, the building is absolutely amazing. So, but when Americans failed 2 years later in 1868, the community they wanted to leave as soon as possible, and obviously they couldn't take their homes with them, and they needed to sell it cheap and quickly. And there was a person who was happy to help them in their difficult hour. That was Peter Martin Metzler, who was a German Lutheran missionary and also a merchant, and just a talented entrepreneur. He had funds. He had a very successful mission, and he had donors, also connections with Europe. So he had the funds. He quickly purchased the homes, the land, and then resell it. And then he resold it to the German colonies from Haifa. You may remember the names of Christoph Hoffmann, for example, or Georg David Hardegg, because these are the founders of the German colony in Haifa. But at that time already, so which is a little bit more than a decade after the establishment of the Haifa colony, German colony, there were already some tensions within the community, and part of the community needed to split. They wanted to separate, and they found the best place for it. And the Driscoll Hotel was also purchased by the Germans, and we will be talking about who owned the place. And well, the hotel started functioning finally, and started finally bringing money. And yes, it was a very expensive place. It is still a very expensive hotel. I have never stayed there, but I was able to visit it last summer when I stayed in Israel. So Hardegg, the one of the Germans that I've just told you about, one of the heads of the community, was the shareholder of the hotel, and they kept the name Jerusalem Hotel in Jaffa because no pilgrim was coming to the Holy Land to see Jaffa. No, it's just because it was the only port. It was the only way to access Jerusalem through Jaffa. Everyone wanted to see Jerusalem, so Jerusalem Hotel was the best name possible. And it still had the American flag, by the way. It was totally okay. And there were 12 rooms, like 12 apostles. The names will be added later on. The more rooms will be added, but you get the point. And all the names had different design. And I like the way their marketing worked. So biblische Einlachtheit, evangelische Reinlichkeit, biblical comfort, evangelical cleanliness. Pardon my German, but you get the point. So everything was revolving around religion, Jerusalem, Christianity. Well, You get the point. And they stood, it very quickly became clear. And well, every year, more and more pilgrims were coming, more and more property was constructed in the Holy Land, especially along the way to Jerusalem. And also, well, more German colonies emerged. The one in Tel Aviv, there's also one more called Sarona or Sharon. Well, that's another one that was established. And more facilities started to be built. More pilgrims were coming every year. And they soon realized that those 12 rooms were not enough. And well, we will see what would happen eventually. But it's still a hotel, a boutique hotel, and this is the same building with the same interiors, well, restored for sure, but because the whole place was just one big mess, and it looked like a graveyard, not not a former not a former inhabited place, not a formerly inhabited place. So this is the entrance. Above the entrance in German colonies, they always would have some quotes, well, from the New Testament, and inside they also restore the interiors. So this is the restaurant where everyone has have breakfast. I was there during, like, it was lunchtime, so well, no, it was before even I think it was before lunchtime, so there were no people there. And last year there were not so many tourists; there were mostly locals, just a couple of tourists that were there that stayed there at that time. And there are a lot of old photographs on the walls from different periods. Well, as you can see, this is we're talking here the Mandate period, the British officers. Yes, we'll be talking about what happened to this place, to this place also after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. And yes, so Germans, all these colonies wouldn't really have been able to exist without close cooperation with the Ottomans. And in the German colony, in Haifa and everywhere else, here in Tel Aviv, uh, Germans employed Ottomans for all sorts of services, for repair works if they couldn't do it, for agriculture, for also just as a personnel, for the stuff, waiters, cleaning ladies, laundry. Ottomans did the job. So, and this is how the two communities uh, cooperated and existed. There was never really, well, major hostilities until the First World War broke out. On the walls, I noticed this painting, which caught my eye immediately. Well, we know it's Jerusalem. You don't need to be a genius to recognize Jerusalem and the way it looked back then. We're talking 19th century. But this particular painting was very familiar. And I quickly put two and two together, and I remember that actually this was one of the paintings of Gustav Bauernfeind. I used to be much better at reading German. I'm not sure what's going on. Bauernfeind. So Gustav Bauernfeind was also he was German, and he wasn't the originally he was not really one of those German settlers, but he was one of those pilgrims that came to the Holy Land just out of curiosity with his family and stayed here for good. And he was an artist, and he fell in love with the vibrant colors, with everything. And thanks to Gustav Bauernfeind, we have paintings of the Holy Land of the late 19th century. It's incredible. So this is, for example, Jaffa. This is the old Jaffa, and he was so accurate. His paintings were so detailed, you can literally recognize the buildings. Jerusalem. That's exactly how this gate looks. And now that you have done 10 tours with me about the Temple Mount, well, I think you can recognize it too. He was accurate with the colors. He was, well, German, very, very German way, and that was amazing. And also artistically, it's a brilliant work. So Gustav Bauernfeind left us dozens and dozens of paintings of Jerusalem, Galilee, Jaffa, the Western Wall. Well, I have seen this painting before, but when I saw it for the first time a couple of years ago, I couldn't really believe my eyes. It looked like a photograph, like a colorized photograph, but it's not. It's actually a painting. Isn't it incredible? Well, the Temple Mount, absolutely incredible. Absolutely. So, uh, this is just a fraction of all of the paintings that can be found. This is the old city of Jerusalem. Eventually, Bauernfeind died in the Holy Land, and he's buried in the cemetery in the German colony cemetery in Jerusalem, where I took you about a couple of years ago. And this painting, the one that I saw in the hotel, in the Driscoll Hotel, the former Jerusalem Hotel, well, I saw this. So this was Jerusalem as of 1902. And so this painting originally was it was hanging in the hotel originally until 1940s. And then later on, well, the hotel was closed and everything, and the painting eventually was purchased by King Hussein of Jordan. He took it to one of his residences. It says Vienna Palatial Estate. I don't know. I had no idea that King Hussein of Jordan had an estate in Vienna, but why not? And he still has it. So this painting still belongs to the family of the King of Jordan. And well, it's just well, it's still in Jordan. It still belongs to Jordan. I don't know where it original. I don't know where it is now, but it still belongs to Jordan. And this is a copy of the painting. But since this painting, and everyone knew that this painting was here, and the people cherished this painting, people loved Gustav Bauernfeind works. He became really popular here with pilgrims, with the locals, with all the local Christian communities. Big deal, big deal. And I'm sorry, my sweaty face because I happened to be in Israel in August, which is the hottest month. So in every photograph, I just looked absolutely red faced and sweaty and whatnot. The hotel has a lot of original decorations, and again, a lot of quotes from the Old Testament and the New Testament, and also a lot of the design of the interior decorations, especially in the restaurant. So it was a German colony. So in German colony, so their restaurants they look like German taverns. So this is from the restaurant. A lot of beer, a lot of alcohol in general, something always themed around food and stuff. So this definitely was a little corner of Germany in the middle of nowhere, in the Middle East. The ceiling decoration is something definitely new, but they were able to save uh well the what survived the about 40 years of neglect. I guess this was partially uh restored. I don't know. Uh, I'm not sure what is written there, but it's definitely about alcohol, and this is a traditional, German beer mugs, and yeah, so it's a little corner of Germany, a little bit of Germany in the Holy Land. That's amazing. And so the Hardegg was one of the shareholders, was one of the owners um, uh, of the hotel, and well, German community here had a lot of connections with the European community in Europe, actually. So with the community in Europe. And Hardegg was one of those very, I don't know, he just had this vision. So these people knew this will be big. So Hardegg invited Mark Twain to the Holy Land and invited him to stay at this hotel. And he came. He traveled, actually, he traveled for several months on the ship with pilgrims. So they saw a lot. They visited Europe. They visited the Levant, which is the old name for the Middle East, and they visited the Holy Land. That's him in the that's the only photograph I think that exists of Mark Twain in the Holy Land, or it's at least the only one that I have been able to find. Uh, so the pilgrimage, right? So all these trips were becoming popular and more popular every year. So Mark Twain was also curious. He also wanted to see it with his own eyes, and he knew this would be interesting to his readers because that's, well, the common people. That's what his audience originally was. And eventually, after his visit, he wrote the book, The Innocents Abroad, All the New Pilgrim's Progress. And yeah, there were chapters about his visit to the Holy Land, and well, he mostly didn't like it because there was no comfort. There was almost nothing in there. So, for example, of all the lands where there are for dismal scenery, I think Palestine must be the prince. The hills are barren, they're dull of color, they are unpicturesque of shape. I remind you that Palestine, this name has nothing to do with the Palestinian state we're talking nowadays, because it's the old name given to this land way before even Islam was born. In the second century Common Era, the name was given by the Romans after they destroyed Jerusalem and the temple, and they just tried to completely eliminate the name of Jerusalem and Jews from history. Just saying, just saying. So Palestine sits in a sackcloth and ashes. Over it broods the spell of a curse that has withered its fields and fettered its energy. We traverse some miles of desolate country whose soil is rich enough but is given over wholly to weeds, a silent, mournful expanse. No wonder American colonies didn't succeed because they were not prepared for it. They they were not prepared for it. And yes, it was tough. And yes, there was no infrastructure. There was nothing. So Mark Twain was actually very right. That's true. Hardegg falsely hoped that this would help to promote the Holy Land. Well, but it didn't actually, ruin his plans because there were plenty of other people who helped the Holy Land, including Thomas Cook. And yes, so in the Driscoll Hotel, this lounge is named after Mark Twain because he stayed in this hotel during his visit, and he sat in that lounge. In that lounge, he stayed there. Thomas Cook, so an English Baptist who started off, just taking fellow Christians on short trips, well, to different churches across the country. And little by little, he realized that there was a lot of interest to this traveling. And yes, it started off as pilgrimage, as, religious conversations, visiting churches and everything. But then he realized that there was actually so much potential there that they could go really out of the scope of out away from Great Britain, Europe. There was a big Europe tour, and then the same time when news were coming, about news came about the pilgrimage, the opening of the Holy Land, and so on and so forth. Obviously, For Thomas Cook, it was absolutely a must to go and check everything for himself. And he went to the Holy Land himself. He um, got to know everyone. So all well, the Hardegg, Hardegg was one of the first people he met. Roloff Lloyd, and this is when they signed the contract, and Roloff Lloyd was the guide and provided all the services for Thomas Cook. Just imagine, just incredible, absolutely incredible. And the American Germany hotel would be providing accommodation to the pilgrims. But obviously, this one hotel was not enough. And there were other properties that belonged to Germans, and then there were other Americans, but now the American colony in Jerusalem as well. So that colony succeeded, but that had a little different history of the foundation. So Thomas Cook eventually offered tours to Palestine and to Egypt. That would be sold out all the time. Yes, it wasn't easy. Yes, it was still wild. But you know what? Thomas Cook opened his offices across the Holy Land. This is the photograph of Jerusalem, not far from the Jaffa Gate. Thomas Cook's World Ticket Office. So Thomas Cook and Son have the largest staff of dragomans, and muleteers also are sole proprietors of the best landau carriages, camp equipment, settlery, etc. in Palestine and Syria. Huh? They were the pioneers. So dragomans are the interpreters, the facilitators that interacted with everyone along the way because they spoke English, they spoke Hebrew, they spoke Arabic, of course. That's incredible. So this is also the ad. This is the ad. The ad on the wall right next to the Jaffa Gate, right next to the entrance. So as you enter Jaffa Gate, you go a little bit left, and there would be already the office of Thomas Cook, the best place possible. So every pilgrim entered Jerusalem through Jaffa Gate because every pilgrim would be coming from Jaffa by Jaffa Road through the Jaffa Gate to Jerusalem. That was amazing. Yeah, but it's not the tour about Thomas Cook. It's not the tour about Mark Twain. But yeah, so these are photographs that were taken of the pilgrims. Well, Thomas Cook. It was it started off as pilgrimage, but then it just any tours, not necessarily religious tours that people will be buying to get to the Holy Land. So these are just some photographs taken on the trips that were arranged by Thomas Cook, and just a lot of promotion, promo materials, just advertising. This kind of gives you a little bit of the chronicles of this hotel. We will be talking about it as well. Well, because we will be talking about the timeline anyway. But basically, what we need to know is that the hotel basically functioned till the times of the First World War. And then everything, obviously during the First World War, it didn't operate. There was no pilgrimage, there was no tourism. Also, the hotel didn't operate during the Second World War times, and afterwards it was closed and only reopened in the modern times. So the Driscoll Hotel is amazing, but really expensive and small. Yes, they added more rooms eventually, so they needed to grow. Hardegg invested a lot into this. But it was not enough anyway. So there was an entrepreneur, another talented businessman that just happened to be in the Holy Land around the same time. Thank you so much, Natalie. Thank you for your tips. Yeah, so once again, this is the Friendship House and the Emmanuel Church. But yes, so I now have friends at the hotel. They cannot give me a discount in case you wonder. No, but they gave me a very good coffee free of charge because I'm a guide and because they like me. So I would highly recommend very good coffee. Yeah. Anyway, but there is also this house just next to the Friendship House and just between the Friendship House and the Driscoll Hotel. By the way, in this photograph, you can see that the Driscoll Hotel has also a more extension over there. And also, by the way, the American House just next to the right hand side that we've seen prior to the Driscoll Hotel, it's also part of the Driscoll Hotel now. It's like family suites, like I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of dollars per night. I don't know how they do it. Yeah. Anyway, so this looks way more modest, a little bit bigger, and yes, this was another hotel. More like originally it was just well, it was not really a competition, but it was an alternative. First, well, let's talk about the person behind the creation of this hotel, and then we'll be talking about. Well, we'll be visiting the museum, and we're going to stop some halfway through. And next time we will start. We will stop. We will start from where we would stop today. So Plato von Ustinov is a Russian last name because this man was Russian. He was the son of a Russian aristocrat. He was born and raised in the area of Volga River, town of Saratov. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of this place, but you must have heard of the River Volga, so like central Russia. And Plato von Ustinov was from a very rich family and also very noble. But von didn't come with the package. Von was later on added, well, because he wasn't German originally. So Plato Ustinov, as a young man, he developed some health conditions, and he was recommended by the doctors to go to change the climate. He was recommended a change of scene, and he decided to go to the Holy Land. I don't know if it can be good for your health. I guess it just probably needed I don't know. I have no idea, but he came to the Holy Land and he was a devout Christian. So he came to Jaffa. He came to the German colony. It wasn't called American German colony, obviously, at that time, right? It's called this way now, but back then, just the German colony. And he made friends with everyone, but especially Melzer, Peter Martin Metzler. Sorry, not Melzer, Metzler. Melzer is the German family that used to make furniture for the Romanovs and, in general in St. Petersburg. So I'm sorry for that. So Metzler. Metzler had properties, he had land, he had money, and also he had a daughter that wasn't married. And Plato von Ustinov was there, and it was like his double lucky strike. So Ustinov had a lot of money, so he eventually purchased the hotel, and then, purchased a house that had been there before, and eventually he would rebuild it into the hotel. And he also married the daughter of Peter Metzler. They got married in Germany. They went to Germany. And because he was a Russian aristocrat, and at that time, queen consort was Olga Nikolaevna, queen consort of Württemberg. Well, you know, it was only a matter of time that, Plato Ustinov would become a naturalized German citizen and would receive the von prefix. Yeah, Olga Nikolaevna was daughter of the Emperor Nicholas I. Just saying. So this is how he became a noble German aristocrat. And by the way, that's him. They returned to the Holy Land and spent their time investing everything they had into making the originally a very small hotel into a amazing park hotel. By the way, his marriage to the daughter of Metzler was a bad idea. Eventually, they divorced, and he married another woman. We'll be talking about it later on. But they had all the children together. And there's one thing that I would like to draw your attention to. If you have a look at the attribution of this photograph, you will see University of Oslo. We'll be talking about it later on. I'm just kind of drawing attention to things. So eventually, Plato von Ustinov, he inherited gazillions of rubles from his father, who was an aristocrat and a very successful merchant, farmer, everything. And instead of, well, and by the way, Metzler even came with Plato von Ustinov to Russia. He went to Samara to the estate of the Ustinov family, and eventually Plato von Ustinov decided to sell everything he had in Russia and move to the Holy Land. So with all the money, he turned his hotel into an incredibly beautiful, gorgeous hotel with a garden and a small zoo. I'm not kidding. And I remind you that up until then, up until Americans arrived, it was just sand dunes, nothing else at all. Incredible. And then, so Plato von Ustinov did it all. And he also had time to collect architectural items, collect antiquities, and he amassed an amazing collection, by the way. Yes, and he had a son. Well, he had a lot of children. So one of them was Yona von Ustinov, and Yona von Ustinov happened to be he was a German journalist and also a diplomat who worked for MI5 under the Nazi regime. Incredible story. And he was all that. But that's not all. So that Yona married a Russian immigrant, Nadezhda Benoit. And we have talked about the Benoit family on my St. Petersburg tours. It's one of the most artistic, one of the most prolific dynasties in St. Petersburg. Architects, artists, theater designers that worked with Diaghilev, Russian ballet seasons, and built palaces for the Romanovs and Russian aristocrats. And this is like two very different stories converged into a completely unexpected environment, right? In the Middle East. That's incredible. So this is just a self-portrait of Nadia Benoit. And their child was Peter Ustinov, who was a very prolific and absolutely exceptional, talented British theater actor. So yes, he was the son of that Plato von Ustinov and that Nadia Benoit. Well, he was the grandson of Plato von Ustinov. He was the son of Yona Ustinov, who was a spy. So just to understand how big the Du Parc Hotel was, I just need to tell you one thing. So in the very end of the 19th century, it was 1898, Kaiser of Germany, William II, came to the Holy Land. And his visit was, it kept everyone on their toes and on edge for months before. and months after. By the way, this photo was taken by the American colony, but in Jerusalem. So the story of the American colony in Jerusalem is very different from that of the American colony in Jaffa. And about a month ago, I did the tour about that colony, so the recording is available for my sponsors, just in case. So that visit was pompous. He came with Augusta Victoria, his wife, and the Ottomans said, well, they sought protection, they sought cooperation and support with the Ottomans, I mean, with Germany, and eventually they were able to get that, to the point that, well, the Ottomans joined Germany, allied with Germany in the First World War. This is just some of the photographs that I'm sharing with you of the visit of Kaiser. Yes, well, and when Kaiser visited Jaffa, he arrived, by the way, to Haifa. By that time, there had already been built a port, thanks to the German community, by the way. Yes, in Haifa, they built a port. And this is where the Kaiser arrived. So Kaiser arrived at the hotel built in Haifa, German colony, and then he arrived to, obviously, eventually he arrived to Jaffa, and he stayed at the Du Park Hotel with his family. Because it was run by a German aristocrat, Plato von Ustinov. And the entourage of Kaiser stayed at the Jerusalem Hotel that is now the Driscoll Hotel. Just sharing some photographs of that, from that visit. It was a very pompous visit. This was Jerusalem. Yeah. So, now it doesn't look, well, that impressive. Now it's just a pilgrimage center, and it's also a hotel, and it's also the organization called Beit Immanuel. This is like the Messianic. Well, it used to be run by a Messianic community. It's now, well, a Christian missionaries that, well, I will be talking about it in more details later, but obviously now any missionary activity is prohibited in Israel, just in case, any of that. So no Christian organizations are doing that. No organizations do that in the Holy Land. Well, officially it's totally prohibited. Yeah, but it's just a Christian community that gathers, and, well, it's kind of their center in Jaffa, but it's just a Christian community. It's mostly, well, Protestant community, but we will be talking about it next time when we are going to visit the church. So this is the big territory next to the Du Park Hotel. I'm also including this video I took in August with my phone, a gigantic ficus tree. And the garden that Plato von Ustinov had was incredible. It was big. It wasn't just, some palms, some ficuses and everything. It was way more than that. He had animals there. And also, as I told you, Plato von Ustinov was the antiquities collector. He amassed one of the biggest collections of artifacts. And eventually, the entire collection was sold by his descendants. It was purchased by University of Oslo. What were the odds? And you can find the exhibits there. So they exhibit it. So next time, hold on a second. Let me just make sure I'm not missing on anything. No, that's okay. So it's not really a big museum. It's not like the Friendship House that has like several rooms filled with all sorts of artifacts, of the American settlers. No, it's not like that. It's just one room But this room has a lot of rare photographs and some exhibits that, well, will definitely shed light on the history of this land. And yes, so by the way, the first photographs on site were actually, and the first photography workshops would be opened by Germans and Americans. And most of the photographs of the Holy Land that exist in the world were actually, well, were taken by Germans and Americans. And now they are property of Library of Congress, of European institutions, and also property of Israeli institutions, of course. So, but yes, um, and thanks to those photographs, by the way, yeah, this is Jaffa, just the way it looked, and yes. So again, as I said, it's not. So you see, it's me in just one room, and this is the postcard taken. I would say turn of the 20th century. It's colorized, but well, just imagine within several decades after Germans arrived, eventually they made this into a thriving corner of Jaffa. And alongside the German colony, which is now the American German colony, other neighborhoods would be growing. So this became just one of the hugest corners of that area, just absolutely. And it's really a pity that the American settlers did not make it. Just look at this. Look how green it was. There used to be a lot more buildings, right? Well, there's still some of them, but not all of them survived. Not all of them it was possible to bring back to life in the 80s and 90s of the previous century. But well, you see the same Driscoll Hotel, the Jerusalem Hotel. You can see that house just next to it, which is now part of the hotel. You can see there were a lot of gardens. It was so green. It was an oasis. And we are in the desert. Almost not the desert, but you get the point. So next time we're going to spend quite a lot of time in this room, just one room, talking about the history of the place, seeing a lot of rare photographs, and talking about some incredible personalities behind this. And after we're done with this room, we will be talking about the organization that now runs the place, and I will be taking you to the church, and we will have just a final round of the German colony together with you. So let me just close the video and open the chat. Let me know if you have any questions, and hi to everyone else who joined us after we started. Hi, dears. I didn't want to waste time and just almost keep the introduction and got down to the tour because I knew it would take me a lot of time. Again, so this tour took me also a lot of time. Well, it's not like, no, it doesn't take any time at all to prepare for tours, but this involved a lot of reading. Luckily, there's a lot of literature in English. There is some literature in Russian about the Ustinov family and about the Yona Ustinov, who was the MI5 spy. Thank you, Mary. Thank you so much. So it's just incredible how in one place so many stories and a faith of people converged. And hi, Dolly, dear. Good to see you. I started to worry, like I didn't know where you were, so I even texted you, but I'm glad you're here. I'm just glad you're okay. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. Next episode is already up. I'm going to send the links again because I never know if you can see the previous messages. So next episode is going to be the last one. I don't have any plan to turn it into the endless series of talks, but you see, it's this place has a lot to talk about. Sharon, thank you so much for the coffees. Thank you, dear. Yeah, so here are the links. And after this American German colony tour, I will be taking you to Jerusalem again because I cannot spend too much time not in Jerusalem. And I am torn between the two locations. But one of them is definitely going to be the Tower of David Museum, which is absolutely incredible place that gives you, I don't know how many tours it's going to take me, 10, 15, I don't know, but it gives you the history of this land starting from the 3,000 years ago. Yes. So I know, Sharon, I know you have been waiting for this tour for a long time. I know. Yes. And it took me quite a while to film everything. So I started filming actually a year ago, even before my summer visit, and then filmed it in summer. Thank you, Ronnie. And then I filmed it in January this year when I was in Israel. Like, and then I asked my colleagues to film something that I wasn't able to film. So it's crazy. Yeah. So, but I'm working on it. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you for interest in my tours. Thank you for your support. Thank you very much again. Speaking about the hotels, any news about the fate of the Rothschild Hotel? Which Rothschild Hotel? By the way, I will be talking about the Edmund the Rothschild, by the way, because he visited the Park Hotel. He was friends with, well, not like friends, but he was um, very friendly and he, well, cooperated with Plato von Ustinov as well. So we will be talking about it for sure next time. So we will be talking about it. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. And I will see you next. Well, for my sponsors, I will see you on Friday, right? And everyone else, I will see you on Saturday. Some tours are already up, but more are going to be added shortly. So I wasn't sure which hotel, the Rothschild Museum. The Rothschild Museum. Uh, well, I'm not sure which you're talking about. Well, there is obviously the Rothschild family uh, big burial, the museum, but I'm not sure which museum you're talking about. I haven't been there. That I can tell you, I haven't been there. Um, Text me, Maria. We will work it out for sure. Mm. Hmm. Interesting. Thank you so much, everyone. I will see you very soon. Thank you for everything. I have already shared the recording of the Sarajishvili House, by the way, Sarajishvili Museum, and the Soviet literature recording is going to be shared shortly. And I'm hoping to finalize with recordings tonight before I go to bed. Thank you so much, and bye bye. Shavua Tov.